at the Granville branch, and I'm here with Melissa. We'll have her introduce herself.
I'm Melissa, and I'm a youth librarian at the Crouse Memorial Branch in Rockford.
And we're here today to talk about some of the coolest, greatest graphic novels that have come out this year, or maybe a little bit of last year. And we're going to talk about all kinds of different graphic novels. We'll start at the kind of earlier end and work our way up. And we're going to start with Melissa.
All right. So the first book I want to share with you guys is a new book. It's called Cranky Chicken. And this is the debut book in what I think is going to be a really delightful series for early readers. It's by Catherine Battersby. And it's just so wonderful. It is about this chicken, you can see here, very cranky, and Speedy Worm. Cranky Chicken doesn't think that she needs any friends. She's just grumpy. Everything kind of makes her mad. Of course, Speedy Worm comes along and is determined to be her friend. Will they be able to have a good friendship being so different? You'll have to read the book to find out. One of my favorite things about this book is the absolutely gorgeous color palette and beautiful illustrations. It also has a really witty humor throughout all of it. It's funny and it's clever, but it's also really approachable. As far as reading level goes, it's perfect for kids who are just starting to read on their own, or who are maybe reading out loud to their parents regularly, or whoever's taking care of them, and are ready for something a little bit longer. This is a great book. It's organized into chapters, but they're nice and short and sweet. It's really good for fans of like Mo Willems' Pigeon books or Elf and Piggy, but who are ready for longer books. I also thought of Jan Thomas's books when I read this, and of course, Narwhal and Jelly fans will love this one. All right, Katie, what do you have for us?
Well, goodness, Cranky Chicken looks hilarious. I love those illustrations. My first book is called Thunder and Cluck, Smart versus Strong. And this is by Jill Essbaum and illustrated by Miles Thompson. And Thunder and Cluck are best friends, and they also are dinosaurs. And they have kind of an ongoing argument between the two of them about whether it is better to be strong or smart. So Thunder thinks that strength is the most important skill to have. And Cluck, who is over here, Cluck thinks that being smart is the most important skill to have. Well, when Thunder steps in some quicksand and starts sinking gradually into the earth, they have to decide how to save him. And their argument about smart versus strong comes up. But it turns out that they might need both of their skills to help save Thunder from the quicksand. This is a very fun book. It's part of a ready-to-read graphics series. So it's a level 1 reader. What I love is that this teaches you at the beginning how to read a comic or graphic novel. So Jill Essbaum talks about the panels and how panels work, what direction to read, and how to read the word bubbles and understand who is saying what, which I thought was a really great inclusion. And it just is so silly and fun. Kind of like Melissa was saying, this has kind of the humor of Mo Willems or Jan Thomas with some great dinosaur characters. So that is Thunder and Cluck, Smart versus Strong. It's the first book in a early graphic novel series, which is great. And I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Alrighty. So it looks like we are really into fun, silly humor this spring. Maybe we are just ready for a good 2022. But I have another fun, silly humor early reader. This one's called We Will Find Your Hat. And it's the second book in a new series called Archie and Reddy, named after these two adorable little characters. The first book came out and then the second book came out really quickly. So I figured, let's just book talk book number 2. Book number 3, I believe, was just published last week, but I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet. Anyways, Archie and Reddy by Candy James. They're absolutely adorable. This again will appeal to a lot of the same kids that Cranky Chicken would appeal to. Really great early reader for kids who are just starting to read on their own. While Cranky Chicken is a little bit more like a long picture book with some panels included, Archie and Reddy is definitely a graphic novel. Every single page is all panels. So the premise of this book is that it's hat day. And Reddy is super duper excited about hat day, you can see, standing on top of this pile of hats. But despite Archie having this gigantic pile of hats, she can't find her favorite hat. And that's a problem. Will they be able to find Archie's favorite hat so they can totally celebrate Hat Day as best they can? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out. It's, again, great for kids who are fans of like sweet, silly humor. Reminded me of Elf and Piggy and Narwhal and Jelly again. If you're looking for more early graphic novels to add to your early reader collection, this is a great one. And I'm glad that so many of these are being published so quickly. All right, I have another one. This one is for a little bit more advanced readers, and it's the second book in a series. And I love this series so much, I actually book-talked the first book too as a mystery last year. So this is my very favorite junior easy chapter book series right now, but it is definitely a graphic novel. The series is called Simon and Chester. This one, book number 2, is called Super Sleepover. These two are just the best. They are the funniest pair of friends. In this book, Simon, our ghost, and Chester, best friends. Simon lives in Chester's attic. Simon has a haunting inspection coming up, and he has not done well on his haunting inspections in the past. And every time he fails an inspection, he gets transferred to a new location to haunt. And Chester is determined that this is not going to happen because he's not going to lose his best friend. So he decides he's going to help Simon train. And everything's going great until Chester gets an invitation to a sleepover the weekend before the haunting inspection. And he's trying to get out of the sleepover because he doesn't really think he even needs human friends. He's got Simon. He's very happy hanging out at home, watching TV, writing stories, and eating copious amounts of cookies with Simon. How are they going to solve this problem? Because Chester's grandma is forcing him to go to the sleepover. She thinks he needs to make some friends. So they have to figure out how Chester will survive having to go out to the sleepover. And Simon will pass his haunting inspection. And it's super duper funny. It's a little bit sweet and tender at times. It definitely deals with themes of like friendship, and it's tinged with just a little bit of like nostalgia about aging too. But they're so funny. The art is great. The facial expressions that the author illustrator Cale Atkinson can put on one ghost are just like across the board, just larger than life. It's so wonderful. So I highly recommend Simon and Chester, book 2, Super Sleepover. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Katie.
I love Simon and Chester so much.
I just love them.
Much. They're so cute and fun. And we used the first Simon and Chester book in one of my graphic novel book clubs. And I actually had kids all the way up to age 10, and they loved the book. And they said it reminded them of Scooby-Doo, kind of. But we also, Cale Atkinson has all these cool drawing videos. So if you read the book, you can learn how to draw Simon and Chester from Cale Atkinson.
I should find his YouTube channel. That reminds me, another thing I wanted to mention about the book is it's not very long, but you're exposed to a much bigger vocabulary. He uses a lot of long words. So it's just great for kids who are ready for a more challenging vocabulary.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, speaking of challenging vocabulary, the next one that I have to show you is called Otto, a Palindroma And this is by John Agee. And John is kind of known mostly for his picture books so far. And this is, I think, his first graphic novel. And the main character is Otto. And Otto, during dinner, is daydreaming. And while he is daydreaming, he kind of floats out of his body into his daydream world, where he has all kinds of adventures. He sees mysterious art and finds himself in the middle of mazes. He's in the middle of the rainforest. He wears some really incredible hats and meets a lot of really interesting, wacky people. You can kind of see from the cover all of the different people Otto meets. And what's really interesting about this book, first of all, I love the illustrations. I love that John Agee kind of has a sort of simple style with how he illustrates his books. I think that if you wanted to try to draw some of these characters, you probably could do it, which is really fun. But the other thing that he did is he wrote this entire book using palindromes. Palindromes are words that can be read the same way forwards and backwards. So Otto is a really good example because whichever way you go, it always says Otto. So all of the words in this entire book are palindromes. I have no idea. It must have taken him forever to write this book and make it make sense, because it does make sense. And so I really like it because a lot of the story is told through the illustrations. And then you have this really fun word game kind of going on with the text. So it's a big adventure. You've got all kinds of really interesting characters, and every page is kind of a new surprise because you don't know where Otto's daydream is going to take him next. And you learn a little bit about palindromes, which is kind of a fun word game to play, just to try to figure out if you know other words that can be read the same forwards and backwards. So that is Otto by John Agee. And I thought it's a really fun adventure. And sometimes you just want to lose yourself in a book full of interesting people and settings. And I will turn it back over to Melissa. I think you have an adventure now too.
I do. And I wanted to say, I love John Agee's picture books. I have used them in Storytime before, and my head just exploded a little bit when you described how he wrote that book. So I will be putting that on hold when we get off of this.
He has a great imagination. I love how he, even in his picture books, he takes you to different worlds and scenarios, and there's always some good humor. Mm-hmm. I love him.
Yeah, so the next book that I have is my first not super funny book. But like all my other books, I've noticed it is about a pair of friends. So this one is called Treasure in the Lake by Jason Pamment. And it's in our junior graphic novel section. So this is middle grade for kids who are reading, middle grade chapter books or who are really into middle grade graphic novels. Jason Pamment is Australian. This book felt very French to me. So if you're into like French culture, French art, you will definitely like this one. It's an adventure story about two young teen kids named Iris and Sam. And Iris is looking at getting into a new school. She's actually just been accepted into a new school in a different city. She finds her hometown very boring. She's really just like longing for adventure, to get out of her hometown and just go find something. She's really into treasure hunting, and she loves to play outdoors. Sam has been her best friend since childhood, and he is kind of a homebody. He is really he enjoys being comfortable. He enjoys close friendships. He loves following Iris around on all of her big adventures, but he's getting worried because he doesn't want her to leave, and he doesn't want her to be bored with the life that they have together in their hometown. So Iris one day goes out to this river that they played by when they were children, And she finds that the river has completely dried up. Completely. And as she walks down the riverbed, I don't want to give away too much, but she kind of finds herself transported into a different time and place. And has to really kind of grapple with like her own like identity and aging and her relationships and what she wants out of life and whether it's better to be brave or loyal or if you can be both. And Sam, of course, is trying to rescue her from the terrible peril that she finds herself in when she may not need to be rescued. It's very, very sweet, tender, slightly haunting coming of age story. And as an adult, I really loved it. It's great for fans of Amulet. If you've got a kid who is like just waiting for that last Amulet book to come out, this is a really good holdover. It's also probably really good for fans of like Raina Telgemeier or any other like middle grade realistic fiction, because while it is technically like a fantasy, it definitely deals with a lot of the same themes about aging, life, friendships that a lot of the good realistic middle grade graphic novels come out deal with. So that is Treasure in the Lake by Jason Pammett. Let's go back to Katie.
That sounds wonderful. I want to read that one. It does look French too. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, it's got some like nonfiction information in the back that I would love, like after reading the book, I'd love to dig into studying that more. So it definitely made me like inspired to learn more about the real world when I was done.
Oh, interesting. Very cool. Well, we didn't plan this, but my next book is also by an Australian author. We didn't do that on purpose, but there we go. So my next book is called The Odds, and this is by Matt Stanton. And this is another silly one. I don't know why. I was mostly drawn to silly books this time, but silly is great. Like Melissa was saying, sometimes you just need to laugh. And I do think this has some poignant aspects to it too. So the deal with The Odds is that our main character, I'm going to show you on the back cover. This is our main character back here. Her name is Kip. And Kip is a very shy, very quiet girl. And she lives in a really big city. She goes to a very big school. And all of those big things are kind of overwhelming to her. She has a hard time making friends, and she's kind of very shy. She lives with her dad, who is a comic book author and illustrator, and she kind of is a homebody a lot of the time. Well, one day when she wakes up in the morning, all of these characters are standing at the end of her bed staring at her. And they all, understandably, freak out and are screaming because no one knows why the characters are there, including the characters. They just showed up there. And then Kip starts looking at these characters in her room and realizes that they all are characters from parts of her life. So the bunny character in the middle is her dad's main character from his comic books. She realizes that the older man is Theo the Builder from this picture book that her grandfather gave her when she was a little baby. She realizes that Blub, who's kind of the alien in the middle, is her pencil eraser. The dinosaur is from a nightmare that she has been having for a long time. And the racer character is an avatar from this video game she plays with her dad all the time. So she figures out who all of these characters are. The only one she can't figure out is he's not even on the cover. There is an elephant character that's not on the cover there. So it's 10 fictional characters from all parts of her life. She can't figure out where the elephant has come from. And none of them can figure out why these characters have shown up in her life and in her bedroom on this day, or really what to do, because if the characters leave Kip's house, everyone else will also freak out because there's a dinosaur and a giant chicken and a giant rabbit roaming around. So Kip and her dad try to keep the characters at their house. That does not work. They will not be contained. And so part of the book is about Kip and the characters trying to figure out how to live together and why the characters might be there. And it might just be that the odds are there to help Kip make some friends. And so Kip kind of goes on this journey at school where she's assigned to a group project with some other kids, and she has to kind of come out of her shell a little bit, and the odds help her do that. This was very fun. Again, you've kind of got that simple art style, which I really like, because you can try to draw the characters too. And I just love, you've got the faces of how all of these characters are reacting to each other at the beginning. And I just love it. They've all got the exact same wide-eyed stare at each other, except for the race car driver because they're in the helmet. So this is the first book in a series, and I loved all the personalities of the odds and just following Kip on her journey too. And I will turn it back over to Melissa.
So I have a really bizarre, zany story too for my next one.
Yes, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
All right. So I've got this book by Isabel Roja. It's called The Adventures of Team Pom, Squid Happens. And the first thing that struck me about this book was that the art style is just really unique. It looked different from a lot of the other graphic novels that I've picked up. And that was only the smallest fraction of how different it is from a lot of the other graphic novels I've read lately. It's like the perfect book for kids or adults who just want to be surprised. If you enjoy not being able to predict what comes next, you will love this book. So it follows these three main characters, Ruby, Agnes, and Roberta. They're all kind of misfits. They go to a school in Queens, New York, and they decide to band together to form a synchronized swimming team. And they're going to be the best synchronized swimming team that ever was. Odds are stacked against them. At least one of these ladies has been kicked off a synchronized swimming team for being too weird. So they haven't had a lot of time to practice together. They find, and you can probably guess from the title and the cover art, a very large, surprising, somewhat magical creature in their high school swimming pool and decide maybe we could add this creature to our synchronized swimming team. Maybe it would make us better. Is that allowed? Does everybody on the team have to be human? All the while, this creature, this very friendly creature that they've added to their team is being pursued by a couple of human-sized, tuxedo-clad rats who appear to be British. It's like, what is even happening? But it's amazing. And the characters are just fabulous. The art is beautiful. The creature itself is one of the cutest creatures I've ever seen in a graphic novel. I would really recommend this book for kids who enjoy books like Phoebe and Her Unicorn or the Lumberjane series or other like graphic novels that star a cast of characters like Cardboard Kingdom. Yeah, I'm glad that I found this one. It's really fun. It's short. It's great. All right, let's go back to Katie.
That sounds like a riot.
It really is.
I love that.
What is happening?
Everything you said, it was just like, there's bats and the creature in the pool. Yes, that is my jam. I can't wait to read it. So my next one is called Marshmallow and Jordan. It's by Alina Zhao. And this is kind of a more realistic story. I think fans of Raina Telgemeier or the Best Friends series might like this one. So this is about Jordan, and Jordan was in an accident. She is paralyzed from the waist down, so she uses a wheelchair. And we know in the book that the accident has happened recently. because the previous school year she was a star on the basketball team at her school. And I should say it's important to know that Jordan and her friends live in Bali, which is an island in Indonesia, and so kind of South Asia. And so Jordan at her school, they do not have, and really in her area, they do not have wheelchair sports. So Jordan kind of still helps out with the basketball team. She sort of is like an assistant coach. She still has a great free throw if she can get close enough to the basket. But they don't let her play in the basketball games because they're worried she might get hurt. So she kind of has to deal with watching her team keeping playing without her, which is really hard for her to watch. Well, one day she finds a baby elephant at the playground, and the baby elephant's foot is injured. And Jordan names the elephant Marshmallow. And Marshmallow, kind of like in the odds, Marshmallow maybe has shown up to help Jordan find a way forward after her accident. So Marshmallow ends up becoming the mascot for the basketball team. She is kind of a great support to Jordan. And one thing that Marshmallow does is one night Marshmallow goes outside and digs a pool in Jordan's backyard. And this is when Jordan realizes that she still can swim. Actually, she can swim pretty well using her arms. And she ends up discovering that the water polo team needs an extra player. And I love this book so much. If you are interested in sports, this is such a great story about triumph over adversity and how it can be so empowering to work really hard at a sport and get good at it. So Jordan works really hard and she ends up playing on the water polo team, and she makes some new friends on the water polo team. Also, you also have the mystery of Marshmallow and where Marshmallow has come from, and if Jordan can help Marshmallow go home. I love that Jordan's school is very diverse. You learn a lot about Indonesian and Balinese culture. The illustrations are gorgeous. They are all watercolor, and there are a lot of pages where the whole page is just an illustration of Jordan or her world or Marshmallow. And this is just it's a friendship story. It's a sports story. Jordan is a very fierce character, and no one treats her differently because she's in a wheelchair now, which is great too. So there's some really nice portrayal of being in a wheelchair and finding new ways to keep playing a sport. So that is Marshmallow and Jordan by Alina Zhao. And then I have one more I'm going to talk about before we go back to Melissa. And this is another silly one. This is called Bedhead Ted. It's by Scott San Giacomo. I should have practiced that one. And this is about Bedhead Ted, which is a kind of mean nickname that a bully has given Ted because he has this giant, uncontrollable hair. Things get lost in it. Ted keeps trying to wear hats or kind of control his hair, and no matter what he does, it all springs back up on top, kind of like you see in this picture. So part of the book is about Ted trying to find ways to deal with the bullies at his school. And he does this with the help of his best friend, Stacy. And Stacy is also bullied at the school because Stacy is a boy with a name that a lot of people think should only be a girl's name. And so Stacy and Ted are dealing with a lot of bullies. There also is a giant raccoon in their town called the Brookside Beast. And Ted and Stacy decide that they're going to try to find the Brookside Beast and prove that it actually exists. And the last thing I will say is that there might be a reason that Ted has this giant bushy hair. And you have to read the book to find out, but it's pretty cool and it surprised me a lot. I was not expecting what was going on at all. So this is Bedhead Ted. It is quite a riot. I thought it was really fun, but also gets into some of those school themes and friendship themes too. And I will turn it back over to Melissa.
All righty. So I have one more book to share with you guys. And it is a brand new book by Jeffrey Brown called Batman and Robin and Howard. And if the art looks familiar to you, it's because you've probably seen Jeffrey Brown's art before. He did a lot of the Jedi Academy books. He also has a series called Lucy and the Neanderthal, which is fairly popular. So this is a new book that he published with DC Comics that is quite different from most of the other Batman graphic novels I've read. It follows Damian Wayne, Robin, as he switches to a new school. And if you can imagine, it's very difficult having Batman and Bruce Wayne as your father, but those challenges are basically nothing compared to switching to a new school and trying to adjust while you also know that you're a crime-fighting super genius. So when he gets to this new school, he meets Howard. And initially, Howard is like a really nice guy, but they kind of turn into rivals. And I don't know if you guys have ever met boys before, the rivalry gets intense. And it's even more intense when you have two super smart, super talented, super likable guys. So basically, it's a story about friendship. It just happens to be set in the DC superhero world, starring Damian Wayne. It deals a lot with his just like growing up and adjusting to changes, challenges, all the while Bruce Wayne is trying to be a good dad and, you know, not living up to his own expectations over and over. It's sweet. It's kind of funny. If you like books like Jeff Brown's other work, let's see what else. Oh, if you like Lunch Lady, Captain Underpants, or Dogman, this is probably going to be a big hit with that crowd too. So, oh, and I also wanted to say, I haven't mentioned this. I haven't announced this publicly yet, so it's a sneak peek. We are bringing Jeffrey Brown to the Reading Rocks in Rockford Festival on June 4th up here at the Cross Memorial Library. So I will get to meet him and he'll do a drawing demonstration for us. It'll be really fun.
Wow. Melissa, you have rocked my world. I can't wait to come see Jeffrey Brown.
I know. I'm really excited too.
That's awesome. How great that you guys are bringing him in. I hope a lot of people get to go see him. That's so cool.
Me too. He was really nice. I was surprised when he said yes so quickly, and I'm thrilled that he did.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. So here at the end, I have 2 nonfiction graphic novels to tell you guys about. Now, I don't know about you, but I am not a big nonfiction person. I usually find nonfiction to kind of be a little bit dry and hard to get through. And so what I like about nonfiction graphic novels is sometimes when there are illustrations, I think that it breaks up the text a little bit and it makes it really interesting. So the first one I'm going to tell you about is part of the Amazing Inventions series. And this is Amazing Inventions Sneakers. And this is all about the history of sneakers and how they were invented, how they developed over time. So this is by Blake Hoena and illustrated by Siege Rowland. And this is just fascinating. One of the things I loved that I learned was that comfortable shoes like sneakers became more popular in the 1850s because of croquet. Now, I don't know if you've played croquet. That's the game they play in Alice in Wonderland, except with mallets instead of flamingos. But before the 1850s, people wore really uncomfortable work boots and shoes all the time. And they really didn't have a reason that they needed comfortable shoes. Obviously, they wanted comfortable shoes, but they didn't really have a reason they needed them. So in the 1850s, people started having more time to just chill out and have fun. And croquet was kind of one of the ways they did that, also tennis. And so they started working on shoes that were more comfortable. The other thing I learned that was really interesting is that the first shoes with rubber soles, so most of the shoes we wear now have rubber bottoms to them. The first shoes with rubber soles were made completely out of rubber, and they used the bottoms of the shoes used to melt in the sun in the summer, and in the winter they would freeze and crack and break apart because they got so cold. So part of this book is about how this man invented a kind of rubber that could be on the bottom of your shoe without getting ruined. And the last thing I'll leave you with, because this is why you should read the book. You've got to read the book to find out how waffles, like the breakfast food, how waffles are connected to sneakers. And they are connected, and you will be blown away learning how waffles inspired part of the sneakers that we still wear today. So that is Amazing Inventions Sneakers, A Graphic History. It's very short, but you learn so much, and I really, really enjoyed it. The other nonfiction book I have for you is also history. This is called Yummy, and it is a history of dessert. Now, I'm sorry, who doesn't want to know the history of their favorite desserts? In this book, you learn about everything from cake to cookies to gummies to ice cream and everything in between. This is by Victoria Grace Elliott. And one thing that I love is that everything in this book is introduced by these 3 food sprites who are down here at the bottom. They're kind of like fairy characters. And their names are Perry, Fee, and Fada. If you're not into the fairy part, it really doesn't impact the reading a whole lot. You're still going to learn a ton. But if you're not sure about nonfiction, I think it adds this whole other layer of really fun experience to the reading. So you learn all kinds of stuff about how desserts came to be. I love that Victoria includes stories from all over the world. So sometimes she talks about, people had different forms of ice cream at the same time. And so we can't really say who invented it first because it was kind of created all over the world at the same time. There are recipes in this book. There are parts of the book called Story Time where you hear myths about how some parts of dessert might have come to be. For example, there's a whole story about waffle cones being invented at the World's Fair. But no one really knows the true story about that. There are a lot of different versions of that story. And so I like that Victoria talks about the fact that sometimes we tell stories about how something was created, but we're not really sure if that's how it came to be. You also learn about the science behind baking. One part that I thought was really interesting talks about baking soda and baking powder and how that's what we put in a lot of things we bake, like cookies and cake, to make it light and fluffy. But they didn't know about baking soda and baking powder for a long time. So what they used to do to make a cake fluffy is they would whip the cake batter for an hour straight. And that would make there be air in the cake batter. And that was how they got cakes to be light and fluffy. Can you imagine beating cake batter for an entire hour? I cannot. This was just fascinating. I loved also that Victoria doesn't shy away from some of the darker parts of history of dessert. She does talk honestly about the sugar plantations and how backbreaking that work was. She talks about, for example, that we didn't have sweet dessert for a long time. Actually, dessert wasn't a thing for a long time because we didn't have trade set up. So things like chocolate and cinnamon and sugar were not available to people very readily. So instead, people made things like eel cake. Eels are like those fish-like things, but they're black and kind of like snakes. They made cake with eels because back then everything was just normal food. There wasn't dessert after dinner. This book is crazy. I am obsessed with this book. I think you learn so much. It's really fun to read about dessert. If you love dessert at all, like me, you have to read it. And I just learned a ton. So that is Yummy, A History of Desserts by Victoria Grace Elliott. And I am going to turn it over to Melissa because we are done book talking.
I am going to try really hard not to think about eel cake like as I'm drifting off to sleep tonight.
No, it's so gross, but it's true.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope that, at least a couple of these books sounded good to you guys. If none of them sounded good, but you still want graphic novels, you can always go to kdl.org. You can always search for new graphic novels. You can literally just type that right into the search bar for our catalog, and it will show you the new graphic novels that we have. You can always request a personalized picks list on our website if you have very specific taste. And if you saw books that you liked in this, but you don't remember what they are, or you were frantically trying to take notes, don't worry, because we are going to link to a book list with all the titles that Katie and I shared in the video description. You can place holds right from that list. So we hope that you guys enjoy the reading that you're doing, and we get to see you in the library soon. Bye.
Bye.